Right, well, it's 6 o'clock. We'll start the meeting. We'll start the meeting with our land acknowledgement. The Chinookian people known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and the other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechakwi was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resource gatherers and stewardships from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia to the Cedar and the Huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced to seas by early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge that the systemic policy of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impacts many Indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native Nation leaders and families who are demonstrated resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands. Now our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right. And we'll go to citizen comments on non-agenda items.
Thank you, Council President. We do have a letter to read into the record from Amber Workala from 24122 Northeast Oregon Street. It goes, I recently requested a permit to acquire a couple of chickens. I live on about a 1/4 acre lot with plenty of space to house a chicken coop and run. We have a greenhouse and garden beds that have really given us a great space to teach our daughter how to create food and work with the earth. We received a prompt response back that our home is not in a zone that allows chickens and that there, in fact, is only one zone in Wood Village that allows chickens. It also sounds like this decision was made some time ago. Can this be readdressed, giving more residents the opportunity to host chickens on their property? Thank you very much, Amber. And so if that's something, as we're going through the municipal code, comprehensive update, if that's something you'd like us to kind of, I guess, add as a option add package like we did with the large vehicles and weekend construction, we can certainly make a little poll with this one as well. Great. That is all for public comments.
All right. Our public safety report.
Right, thank you. Ton of changes from last month. I had a chance to review the document from Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. Reviewed the hit and runs. There was 5 this month. All of those were on parked vehicles that were in parking lots. There was 3 stolens, which trend with the 3.1 average. 2 of them were 19 older Hondas and 1 newer Kia, also similar with the trends that we're seeing in the region. And dispatched to self-initiated calls. Dispatched calls remained about the same moving average of 12 days with a slight dip in the self-initiated activity. I reviewed that against our other contract cities and jurisdictions and found that there was some stops in greater volume in our other cities, meaning that probably a similar number of stops, but some less in this area. Part of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office plan for increasing self-initiated activity is we recently rolled out a new work development plan that will have each sergeant assigned to patrol, which is 9. Each of them conduct a self-initiated mission for their team once per month, starting on April 6th. I'm hoping that Wood Village is included in that first round, but the plans have yet to be done. So with that, are there any questions?
Questions, comments?
One comment here, President Council, Real Scampos, if I can, please.
Go for it.
Yeah.
You put yourself on mute.
That's not funny. But Lieutenant, I appreciate you following up on that question because it just shows that again, your department and the county is following up on the kinds of comments that are coming from the councils and perhaps citizens too. So thanks very much for that follow up, and be interested to see what happens when maybe Wood Village is in a part of that study.
I'm hoping.
What types of missions may they be? Is it, pedestrian, speeding, kind of the spectrum? What could we expect?
The spectrum, we have a EPSI mission, which is Enhanced Public Safety Initiative, actually occurring this Sunday. Jurisdiction has not been chosen. It'll be at the last minute. Recently engaged in conversation with the Portland Police Bureau. Don't want to speak exactly to their study, but their study was done in part with a cancer research team, and it's identifying trends of vehicles, not those that operate them, but the actual vehicle itself, and what makes a stolen vehicle a stolen vehicle. A lot of this is common law enforcement knowledge, but when it's displayed on a thing where if it's missing a license plate, if the license set has baling wire, if there's self-applied window tint, a variety of different circumstances, they go from being able to pick 2 out of 10 stolens to 7 out of 10 stolen cars. We're hoping we are going to have that training this week prior to the mission that's going to happen Sunday night, probably midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, at a jurisdiction focusing on stolen vehicles, with the knowledge that stolen vehicles are used a lot of times in gun violence. That's the enhanced public safety portion of it. So that's a mission that's already planned, that's on the books with one of my night shift sergeants. And as far as the missions that you were speaking to, the newer, what they call the work plan missions, those could be anything that the sergeant deems important, whether that be there's a series of complaints of jaywalking, complaints of speeding, they notice speeding, they notice some kind of safety, maybe traffic crashes are higher. It could be something criminal in nature, like stolen vehicles are increased in this area, but I would expect the first round of them to be mostly public safety orientated towards pedestrians or vehicles.
Great, thank you.
And what you're speaking, if is that based off like hard data that you guys have, or is that based off, non-emergency phone calls that you guys are receiving? Or how is that data being compiled? And
I would say that it could be any of that. We could use the law enforcement report to show where stops have increased or where crashes have increased rather, and or citizen complaints. We absolutely, not in our jurisdiction here at Wood Village, but another jurisdiction, we've been dealing with a gentleman that brought our attention to this rural stretch of land on 162nd. That's half county land and half Portland Police. And apparently Google Maps suggested that folks take that route as opposed to the 205. And so they've seen their traffic increase and the speeds go up. So it could be addressed like that. So I'd say any number of which we're kind of leaving to the sergeant's discretion to come up with the mission that'll come through the command and be approved. But they do know the expectation of some data driven, whether that be from the report or from a known citizen complaint.
thank you.
Well, I like that you're putting down the vehicle makes and the years on there. I don't know if it was done in the past, but I appreciate that information.
You're welcome. I did ask Kevin Morelli, who generates this report, to provide the ledger or key. He just expanded a lot of, I asked if you can't provide the ledger, for some reason the computer program changed, but just make everything a little more plain English as opposed to abbreviation. So.
Anything else, Mayor?
Yes. Again, I just want to reinforce this with the lieutenant, that this kind of work is what I certainly see and hear, that the enforcement does even though they're small things, it has been somewhat neglected, as you well know, for all the reasons we've talked about, COVID, staffing, et cetera. And I think the little things can lead to big things. And I really appreciate the fact that you are moving off of anecdotal evidence, because the deputies know, and police officers have a pretty good idea on, as you described, some of the profile of a potential stolen car. Now, it doesn't mean that every car with a license plate hanging on it with a piece of baling wire is a stolen car. But you have anecdotal evidence, and I appreciate now you're going to use some of that anecdotal evidence to now start defining the mission and using your sergeants to help you define what that's going to be. So it just sounds like, again, I applaud the work and how you're approaching that.
Thank you.
Well, kudos to the sheriff's department also, because my neighbor across the street, his truck was stolen, and I guess it took about 2 months at least. And then they recovered it, and the place that it was recovered was a place where they were, taking vehicles apart and this type of thing. And unfortunately, his wasn't. So that was and he got it back. All he had to do was just change out the locks on it and stuff. So that saved him a ton of money in doing that. So that was awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you for your time.
We'll move on to review of bills paid for the month of February. That one doesn't need a,
Nope, that's just if anyone has any questions.
any
on it.
questions on bills paid? All right, then we'll move on to consent calendar. I'll look for a motion.
Make them.
Go for it, John.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
A
Motion,
second.
first and second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Motion passes. Now we'll move to resolution 05-2023.
Thank you very much, Council President. So Mayor and Council Presidents, give you a moment to pull up the presentation. All right, so this is Resolution 5/2023, revising our city's value statement. So during our last council retreat, just over a month ago, the council looks at the mission statement, goals, motto, and then value statement. And value statement is one that usually would get brought up every year as kind of being a little outdated, not used much, not to say irrelevant per se. And the standing joke was, well, if we change it, we'll no longer be the city that cares. And I think people are willing to live with, a less than optimal acronym than no longer caring. This past retreat, Council President Rios Campos had come with a couple ideas that changes some of the words, but kept it as cares. And that would be instead of courtesy to community and instead of enthusiasm to engagement. We briefed this at your February 14th meeting to make sure that's what you wanted to do. You said, yes, bring us back a resolution making that change. So we have made that change that we still care. And this is really more relevant to what we're trying to attain and what we're trying to do holistically. And so it will be something that we can use more, I think, at a staff level and as part of our promotion, branding, and just again, that value statement, something we as staff, as board members, counselors bring to the table in the service that we do. So with that, what questions do you have? And there's a suggested motion.
I love it.
Yeah, nicely done, Councilor Rio Campos. Thanks for those suggestions.
All right, with that, I'll look for a motion.
Resolution 5-2021, is that right? Or should be 20?
2023, my apologies. I was writing 2022 earlier today, so I've been all over the board.
And move to approve Resolution 5-2023, amending the city's value statement and readopting the mission, goals,
Second that.
First and second, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much. And there may or may not be water bottles being engraved right now with that new value statement. So
That's
thank you
great.
for adopting it.
That was.
Kind
Well,
of.
that, yeah.
Still have mine.
All right, moving right along, we'll jump into discussion, Parks Commission meeting recap.
Screen was scratched.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, Council President, Councilors. No action needed. Hopefully a lot of discussion, but just I want to provide a follow-up. And I believe in the staff report attached to it was also the public engagement and outreach survey that was taken the end of 2022. So if you have any questions on that, hopefully I can answer some, but I just, again, I want discussion, dialogue between council and staff. And with that, we had a meeting in February 2023, talked about some of the projects that were going on, multi-purpose field restoration, tree planting, tree removal, and explained why some trees were removed as they were hazardous and posed a safety issue to park visitors. CDBG grant project that's currently where it's a design build, and staff is doing a great job working with Paul Brothers with the design on that. And hopefully here in the near future, I'll have some renderings for you to take a look at. Community outreach and engagement survey. Again, I'll touch on that, but in the packet you were provided that entire report. And future projects. And I hope that's where we have lengthy discussion with future projects as Seth and his team and our staff are working on budgets for next year and working on capital projects. Just again, want to engage and maybe looking at 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, where Donald Robertson Park is going to go. So with the park survey, it talked some of the future projects that were highlighted were lighting, expanded play area, nature play area. Again, that seems to kind of linger around the last couple of years, that nature play area. It went kind of halted at that southwest corner of Hawthorne. But maybe there's other areas of the park we could revisit and take a look at. Park usage. You know, who's using the park? I believe 1/3 of the respondents are not even Wood Village residents. So we're getting folks that are coming to Wood Village just to visit Donald Robertson Park. So, and then additional surveys. So our staff, public engagement staff member is looking at how to look at future surveys, maybe at events such as Easter egg, night out, those type of situations. Again, this just goes through straight from the, it should not be new to you if you saw it in the staff report. So again, if you have any questions, and you'll see it's things on here that will be popping up later on in the presentation, such as restrooms, play area, parking, sports field, sports courts, future projects, how they ranked out. Seems like, bless you, seems like lighting was a high one, and it wasn't. It was a little more defined in the Parks Commission meeting as to around the multi-purpose field north. So the front end of the park, not the back end, Hawthorne. It was mainly around the multi-purpose field north through the playground, basketball court, restrooms, parking area.
John, I had one question and I I did attend the meeting virtually, but just looking at your staff report, if we can go back a couple slides, something that caught my eye that not that I think we could do a whole lot, but if we look at this graph and with the legend parking, there's quite a bunch of people, said it was fair, and understand that parking is limited just because, again, of the nature of everything else we have in place, but has staff had thoughts or conversations around that?
So we have. So in the 5 years I've been here, we've had conversations about it with Parks Commission too. Kind of looking maybe at that northeast corner. Again, the northeast corner of the park is kind of that open dead zone.
Mhm.
We have a beautiful entry sign there, but maybe we look at lighting. That was also recommended. But maybe that's a play, maybe that we turn in that area into a nature play area or additional parking. So when we did put the city hall here, we actually added parking. So it wasn't a lot, but we did add some parking.
And it's hard to tell with this particular instrument, why they rated what they did. It could have been this little area here to the south. There's a handful of spaces that fill up quickly. It could have been someone went to go use those spaces. There's nowhere to turn around if it is full. And that could have diminished their experience of parking. So it wasn't that there was a lack of parking per se, just their experience of the hassles of, oh, this is my usual spot. Oh, it's full up. And now it's challenged getting back out. That is planned to be rectified in the future, and as it may be more of an active recreation site, removing spaces. But as John said, we have talked about, again, that northern kind of Halsey frontage, expanding that to the east a bit is an option to explore.
Has there been any conversation with McMinimans and potentially using their space or, kind of that dead zone between the school district space?
Oh, we've challenged them for years on the ability to work together with us with that. And they've summarily said no.
There might be some synergies with the school district. If not permanent, maybe special events, larger events, some coordination there. They're doing a transition at the leadership level. So that's something we can certainly explore once they get their house settled. And we've been working with them, very well on our space here for meetings and workshops and things. So hopefully it becomes a very nice reciprocal opportunity that there's, especially, weekends, evenings, when they're not using the space, what could that look like?
Yeah. And again, just throwing out options, but it sounds like, Mark, you've been around a little longer to know some of these conversations. But I also know that McMinimans, their general manager is newer. So it could be an opportunity.
Roger himself and sat in his office and that type of thing and talked to him. And I think it was I was trying to remember who was all there, but anyway, we were trying to see what we could do to work with them. We even had one of our retreats there to try to get some continuity with them and that type of thing. And it just kind of fell through. They are just so busy that they weren't looking to connect whatsoever. And who knows, but maybe now with, like you said, if they've got a new system going.
Yeah. And again,
the fact is that we've got a nice building here.
Yeah. Because we've partnered with them through the recreation program and they seem very receptive of that partnership. And so that's kind of why I bring it up, because it was mentioned if needed for that event, for the 5K that we did here, that they would allow us to use it. So that's where, I guess my idea of speaking with them came from, because I've had that conversation with the new general manager about it. So again, it could be a new avenue.
And that's something we could revisit. So thank you.
And again, I think the the district and school district, and when we have our conversations with the new superintendent, I would advance the ideas that Greg has and shared that we should be able to agree to something when the school district's not using it, that we can use it for the Easter egg hunt or the events that we have. So I think we got some ways to approach this.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And again, moving on through some of the highlights from the survey. Again, field lighting, turf field, soccer goals, which we feel we have a plan for that, hopefully moving forward, and some kind of apparatus in that southwest corner to maybe chain those goalposts to, rather than them just kind of wandering around the field.
I had a question back there, John. The conversation around the storage lockers, what was that about?
Yeah, so that was storage on that southwest corner where the current ball field is, that we're going to be removing that backstop and the fencing there. You know, for folks such as Play East, or maybe a little league group, or youth baseball, youth softball group can use. I don't know, Greg, did you?
Yeah, but basically the idea is, current partners, future partners have a space to secure some gear, whether it's goalposts, bases, supplies, that while they're renting or reserving the space for a season, they have access to a storage space for their gear.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's what I thought it would be, but I wanted to double check. Thank
Okay.
you.
Again, this talks, just highlights out of the survey. Again, comments from the survey, I cut and paste, didn't alter them. Everything from fenced dog area to better seating, which is part of the CDBG project. We're adding bleachers, we're adding park picnic tables, amenities for folks at the baseball field in the northeast corner. We're adding nice aluminum benches, enough seating area where you can seat more than 5 children. So, because right now they're limited seating there. Even if somebody did want to play baseball or softball on that field, there's this limited seating. And the CDBG project that you as a council approved and that is in process right now will alleviate that issue there. But again, I cut and pasted straight from the survey comments that folks were making. So now we can get into kind of why we're here. And like I said, the lengthy discussion, have some, back and forth dialogue with staff and council on recommendations, capital project discussions. One of the big highlights that came out of the Parks Commission meeting after they reviewed the survey was lighting. And I think I kind of touched on lighting kind of around the multi-purpose field north to this area and around the playground. Just seems some enhanced lighting was recommended. And we can discuss as I'm going through, or you can discuss at the end. Again, however, whenever you'd want to chime in.
Yeah.
I like the path lighting that that's nice and it's classy, but it does the thing. And then depending on what staff is looking for, field lighting also I think would be good.
What we also discussed was a timing where it would work with giving them a warning that the lights would blink or something like that, so that we wouldn't leave people in the dark, that, we're not going to run them 24 hours or, all night long. In other words, that we'd run them up until a certain time.
I think it was 10 o'clock was kind of that, that window there.
And then during the summer, the sun stays up till almost 10 o'clock. And so And then, and then during the winter time, we'd probably crank it back. I'm not sure, if anybody's going to stay out when it's 32 degrees so that, we would be able to put some kind of,
Timer or something.
a timer with a temperature in there with it to be able to monitor that and drop that back so we wouldn't be wasting electricity on that. And then have everybody know that the lights would blink so that you wouldn't leave everybody out there in the dark, because this part gets really dark at
Oh, yeah.
night.
It does.
Well, also too, I know I paid attention during the winter times, kind of September on, here after our council meetings, and there's people in the park. There's
Yeah.
people trying to play basketball, whether it is 32 degrees. I mean, there's people
Yes.
in the park and they want to enjoy it. And this was, again, one of the recommendations from the survey, plus also Parks Commission. And like Counselor Clark said, that there was some kind of timer. We're not going to have lights on 24/7, but maybe is it 9 PM? Is it 10 PM? To be consistent with our code, it could be 10 PM. That,
There is a snow melt little box that you can buy for $1,400 that I use on my driveway that melts the snow, and that can actually be used to run lights too. So that it can just be programmed to do
Yeah.
that.
And I think identifying like key locations, just like you mentioned, John,
Yeah.
obviously the
Starts
field,
way up.
even in the wintertime, probably people aren't going to be out there, but the basketball court, yeah, maybe it's a
Stays on
little longer, or the restrooms that are right there, need more.
And then you got motion
visibility.
sensors too.
Yeah.
and that brings up, you mentioned something, the field,
Mhm.
kind of that multi-purpose field. Again, what does that look like? What's that use look like? So again, recommendations were to enhance. And so that's, we want to have this discussion. And so just remember the field and the uses there.
Well, and again, I'm along with everybody else on the lighting issue. All that does is expand the use of this for the people we're trying to serve. Instead of, 7 or 8 hours a day, now it could possibly be 10 or 12 hours a day. So lighting is certainly, I think, important based on what all the information you're sharing here tonight, John, and our Parks Commission has reviewed.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
We're talking about we're talking about one or the other?
No, oh, no, we're,
All of it.
Yes.
it's going to be kind of that south ball field area, walking trail north.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is a study that begins to emerge based on what we find out about the, even further usage or how we can light it and the type of lighting and all the things that I've heard tonight about timers and everything else,
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
as I understand it anyway.
Okay. Next, and again, these are in priority order recommended from Parks Commission. So lighting was number one, restrooms was number two. So right now, yes, we do have restrooms. They are open 24/7. Were they designed to be open 24/7? Absolutely not. They were designed to be open from spring to end of summer and shut down during the winter months. In 2020, 2019, I think it was 2020, council direction was wanted restrooms open 24/7. We've made some investments. But we're hearing from the public that, restrooms is, yeah, they want restrooms. Parks Commission said, hey, yes, make that investment. Kind of, if you build them, they will come, so to speak. And this right here, this unique setup here, it's a 8-stall restroom. And, at any time you can lock them, like during the winter months, maybe you only keep 2 of the restrooms open. So you cut down your maintenance cost. As you increase visitors and as weather gets better, you start opening up the restrooms to full capacity. Designed for the 24/7 use, so to speak, that we're not dealing with pipes freezing and that it's designed for that use. Right now, the restrooms we have are not, we're retrofitting everything as we keep going on in time. And the restrooms are, getting up there in about 20 years.
Near
Near
20 years.
So this is something to think about, these future investments. Now, this investment, I did not have a cost on the lighting and I apologize, or an estimate. Restrooms, you're looking at anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000. I mean,
We're
there's so
trying
many,
to-
there's,
Trying to get a ballpark number. There's a manufacturer in Roseburg. That's actually where this design came from. We're just trying to get a ballpark cost so we know kind of what to plan for, what to budget for.
I mean, there's 4 pages of options. So it's just hard to just for someone to say, yeah, well, here's an estimate. I mean, there's 4 pages of options that we have to go through. And so again, we started this, 2 weeks ago? And we still don't have a cost. So we're kind of ballparking it that $250,000 to $500,000.
And then the
Is this another solid concrete?
yeah, it's a prefab structure, much like the one currently.
Okay.
And the design works individual stalls, seeing, an aging society, if older people need assistance or, children, small children need assistance. You're not, gee, which one do we go into? Which one's kind of empty? It's you go into the one you need, much like here at City Hall. It's open to pretty much everybody. And yeah, the 4 pages of options, I mean, you have programmable lock. So you could set them to, lock automatically at a certain, time well into the evening. Skylights have more lighting without producing, light itself, but then motion lights for evening hours. So a lot to unpack with that, but we're just trying to go right now, get a ballpark for budgeting purposes.
So right now, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Well, my just want to add to this and again, reinforce what I'm hearing is that I don't think we need to think about these restrooms 24/7, 365 days a year. So the things that you're bringing up, I think are real important, that we think about these as broadly used as we can, but I don't believe they need to be 24/7, 365 days a year. Now, so I mean, that may need a conversation with the council, but I certainly don't think that we need to provide that service
Are you
24
saying
hours.
because of the existing ones we have now? Mayor?
Well, partly that, yes, the cost. But I'm not sure. I just don't think a city needs to provide that service 24/7. I think we need to design these with some of the options that I'm hearing, that they have timers, because there is a cost. There's a cost to all of this. And I think the restrooms need to be accessible. They need to be clean. They need to be safe. All the things we've talked about, and the same things we talked about a week and a half ago when we approved the seed money to begin this research on restrooms. But that may require a more lengthy discussion about just how we design these for the use that we want in the park. So I'm just putting it on the table.
Thank you, Mayor. Also something to think about. We did have an urban renewal agency meeting. Urban renewal could fund a fraction of the cost. So something to think about. Also, ARPA funding can fund a fraction of that cost too. So again, something to think about if funding is kind of that red flag right now, that there's other funding mechanisms available. So.
Kind of what's a timeline for obtaining, if we would say today?
In trying to work with the one manufacturer, I'm not sure what their lead times are, but basing on everything else, I mean, if we were to go say, here's what we want, and it's in the budget, we can order it July 1. I would probably, if I could best guess, 9 months from that point. And that really is, I'm tossing spaghetti on a wall. But just kind of based on other things we've experienced, I'd imagine there's a bit of a lead time. And one thing
We have the infrastructure to go into that too, don't we?
We have this, so we'd have to remove the current ones.
Oh, you're gonna put it right where it is? Okay.
It actually, it'll fit. We measured it.
It will fit. Right now, ours is like 24 by 20. So this right here that we're showing is 26.8 by 20.
And so there's enough, might have to do some, concrete cutting or, there'll be some adjustments, but the pad itself is ready. Utilities may have to be reoriented a little bit, but essentially it should.
Topical though, I get.
Correct.
But again, looking at is like the lines, is that sufficient from going from 4 stalls to 8 stalls?
Because
Oh,
the
yes.
meter
Those
size
go.
and all the
Above
line
ground.
sizes.
Yeah.
And I think our goal, what we're trying to do is get a ballpark budget number to put into the budget for consideration, but the actual structure, the facility, the amenities, all those little details would be worked out over those coming months.
There's a ballpark right next to it too. I love that.
But they do have an all-weather package for this one, so they still could be open in the winter, but as John said, maybe just a couple of them open in the winter.
Because I like the idea of, even if it's a initial bigger investment up front, something that can in the long run save us money. So like skylights, these these lights that turn on only with motion, so they're not just consistently on. So looking at things like that, I think is important as well. As again, the city is investing, but looking at something that can give us the best investment for a long period of time. Because 20 years or close to, we would hope that these new ones would last something quite close to that, if not more.
And I don't know if you notice, it is plumbed for drinking fountains. So in theory, we should be able to use the current one that's over there, which is a really nice, the bottle filler, ADA and a doggy one. So that would be the goal, is just replumb it for the current drinking fountain.
What would you do with the old one? The old restroom?
We don't know if there's a surplus market for it. We don't know if you can take it back in half and have someone, ship it to someone who doesn't have a restroom, or if it essentially is recycled. We don't know. We haven't explored that yet.
Yeah, I mean, we just haven't dug that
I
deep
get it.
into it.
I was
So
just wondering if we could
Yeah.
use it in our other park or something. I don't know.
Plumbing would be difficult because there isn't
Isn't
any.
anything over there. I can't store it.
So again, just,
Yeah, I don't know.
and you can see the option. I mean, there's just so many options and
Oh, wow.
looks and available. Like I said, there's 4 pages worth and we didn't even see them all.
Yeah,
So,
got it.
again, it was a high priority. Coming out of Parks Commission, recommendation.
And urban renewal.
And Urban Renewal said that they, yes, thumbs up, go for it. So,
Heated toilet seats?
yeah.
I know that's asking too.
So again, Mayor, you mentioned funding. There are other options for funding, through Urban Renewal, through ARPA funding, through parks. So.
Yeah, no, and that's why I brought up the seed money. And as we proceed with this design work, of high priority to find some funding for it. And I know the Urban Renewal identified it as number 1. So you guys are turning it around pretty quick, it looks like.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Moving on, the multi-field use. So we have the picture on the right there. That's from our better of the 2 baseball fields right now, softball fields. I don't know who would play on that field. To be honest. And so no wonder people aren't using it, is it's not playable. To make an investment, for that to be playable, it's a huge investment. It's time that our staff doesn't have to detail out an infield. And right now we had one, I think it was Little League or youth baseball about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And he came in and it was just too much work for him. To dial it in for his fall ball team. But, there's an option to do maybe just a turf infield, something to look at there. You're going to get use year round and and it's not just baseball, softball, it could be kickball, it could be a small youth soccer, Play East soccer camp can go right there on the infield. So it, again, you make that investment, you build it, they will come. So that was another high recommendation coming from Parks Commission. And again, right, you're looking at about $18 a square foot for an infield. What does that equate to? A lot of variables on backstop distances, foul, third baseline, foul fences, that distance, but you're looking anywhere between 175 to 350, 325,000. So
How, like, kind of what's the average lifespan before having to,
20 years.
20 years?
Yeah, no, there's a local company out in Tigard. We were just going back and forth. I was excited that somebody actually reached back out to me. I reached out to several different turf installers, and there was one out in Tigard, and they were just very responsive and were very helpful in providing me information. And they said it's 20 years.
John, part of that longevity of these fields is the maintenance that goes into it yearly. So there, you know, we can't fool ourselves and think that once it goes down, you ignore it, because they do have to be prepped, and they do have to be ideally once a year treated with some rubber and a machine that fluffs them up and moves the old rubber that begins to decay. And so beyond that, just we want to make sure that if we put this down, there is a budget that is set aside to maintain it, because they're not you pay once and that's all there is to it. So I just want us to be sure we understand that.
Yes, basically what it is, Mayor, you're absolutely correct. They come in once a year, they rake it, and yes, there's a little round rubber. It's rubber, and they sometimes replace them, but yes, they do come in and rake it annually.
Yeah, they kind of beat, you know, and that we were getting about 10 to 12 years out of fields, but those were all-purpose football, soccer, not just an infield. So I think maybe 20 years is possible on an infield. But
Yeah,
that's the most we were getting out of them in the school district, was 10 to maybe 12, but you really have to maintain them.
yes.
And is there any concern of drainage? Because I know some parts of that infield also swamps up during like the wet season. So is
Part of that cost is
it's
the
addressing that.
drainage. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And John, you know, you're,
But-
yeah, go ahead.
Basically, they could create a new base, drainage rock, sand, the whole, like a foundation of it. It's not just going to go on
No,
what's there now.
Yeah, like you said, people aren't using it. Well,
Yeah.
they're not using it because it's not
not
playable.
usable.
I mean, it's just not playable. So
it's a safety hazard.
yeah, and like I said, it's not, yes, it's a baseball infield, softball infield. You can use it for kickball. You can use it for Play East soccer camp on, for the little ones, that the 5-6-year-olds, be perfect area for them. So again, it's more than just baseball. and
It's
softball.
maximizing the space that we have available.
And
Call it a multi-purpose field.
That's right.
And with the investments of, the new bleachers, the benches, the
Mhm.
backstop, this seems to just be a natural kind of next phase of that effort.
Okay, moving on to signs. I know we've talked signs before with Parks Commission, with City Council here, but we're really ramping up the signs now. You're going to see some new signs being installed. Here was a a sign. This is just an example of a kind of a three-way try sign that could go in that open space as you come into Donald Robertson Park and the City Hall and Civic Center. Again, just a bare spot. We tried moving the big Donald L. Robertson sign. It's just not feasible. I think once we start taking it apart, it's not going to go back together, and I just would hate to destroy that with just trying to move it, 200 feet. So that's going to stay where it is. Again, looking at options here, this option here, we just received a quote yesterday or today, and you could actually do some Corbett basalt on the bottom rock, which would match all the retaining walls around the Civic Center here and the Gorge Hub retaining walls. And this is about $15,000. So
That's a beautiful sign.
yeah.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, so again, it's just, I want to provide you that information, not just say, hey, park signs, but okay, give you some dollars to these projects. So this one is about $15,000. But other signs you're going to start seeing around the park are some finger signs and directionals, some around the main trail, around the multi-purpose field. You're going to start seeing like how many feet or the distance, is it 1 lap, a quarter mile? We're going to start implementing that. You're going to see more symbols, dogs on leash. And I think walk your bicycles on the walking paths. So,
And no smoking.
and no smoking. Yes.
And reserve this facility little.
Yeah. So, and here's examples of those, what we're looking at. So the finger signs on the lower left corner, we're thinking about putting those just south of the multi-purpose field to kind of show, some directional there. City Hall, Hawthorne, more trails, the Arboretum, amphitheater, edible garden. So we're starting to reach out. We found a few local folks that make these signs, and we do have allocations this year still left over. So we're going to make some of these happen before July 1.
Does the entrance at the Hawthorne, does that have a sign?
Yes.
Is that's recent then, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
Done as part of the Hawthorne project.
Yeah.
Kind of an updated version of the one we just have up here up front, and it's called Park Expectations. Don't want to call it rules per se, and it was done English and Spanish.
Because I think eventually it'd be cool to have some synergy between, the entrance here and the entrance there with that signage, kind of that similarity there.
Yeah, it should be like whether you start your journey in Hawthorne, Tree Hill, Cottonwood, you start your journey here, it'll be a very cohesive experience.
Yeah.
Just-
So,
Yeah. More directional signs too.
and like design wise per se, because again, really going with that, rock on the bottom and then timber and trees on top. I think that's really, I think it resonates with me for what we've been doing as a city. So.
Okay. Point well
Yeah,
taken.
Stay consistent with with what their the theme is and carry that out.
Yeah. Okay. Point well taken. And again, like I said, just examples of these signs that we're going to start, doing some fabricating and installing here before July 1.
Right.
But, also looking for allocations for next year's budget. So just when you see that, you'll know. You won't be surprised for a $15,000 sign.
Is he asking for an increase for the parks?
He's plugging it ahead of the budget process.
This is the ramp up to the budget conversation.
Yeah. And again, here's one, a planter box in the front north area, right outside City Hall that, it's not used. Maybe some recommendations. What do we do with that? I know that area is slated for a skate park. So I don't know what we do in the meantime. Do we just put some flowers in the meantime, or, again, looking for recommendations from city council. The picture on the right there, that's a beautiful entry sign that I mentioned earlier. We discussed, possibly adding lighting behind that, because at night you you can't see it. So in the wintertime at 5 PM, you can't see that sign. Adding some lighting. And this area was actually an area recommended for possibly a nature play area. So something to think about. We have a design from the Hawthorne project because that southwest corner was going to be a nature play area. So we have a design. We could implement some of the aspects of that in this area here. So
If you recall, we were nixing that for the lighting, though. That was kind of what we as a whole of the group, though, I think that's where we were.
In terms of priority.
well, lighting was number one.
Priorities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just the,
Lighting, restrooms, signs, and then,
We put it the dead bottom. I just remember that. It's just.
yeah.
yeah, we're getting towards the end here. So
I meant
it's at the
as far as
bottom.
priorities go as far as. Anyway, go on.
So then getting into other design options would be futsal and a multi-purpose futsal basketball court, again, called out in the parks capital. Skate park, again, that kind of frontage area, and again, design for that. And then the nature play area that I was discussing earlier. And then some smaller projects was possibly some a disc golf, maybe a 3-basket disc golf practice area in that southwest corner, maybe a BMX track somewhere in the park, you know, so that was also discussed from Parks Commission.
There was quite a bit of talk on the Frisbee golf, which they call disc golf. There was even somebody was even offering they have a couple of, I don't know what you call these things here.
I call them baskets. Yeah. So we do have, so one of our staff members is actually a City of Wood Village resident who
Right.
frequents the park also in his off time. And he has some friends that's what they do is disc golf, and they have a couple baskets willing to donate.
Right.
So, again, don't want to move forward until we talk to council and see some of these smaller projects. We're looking at a design right now for it because we don't want to impede on the walking trails. So that's always, I mean, you don't want to walk on a trail and get hit with, a Frisbee or a disc. So
Mhm.
again,
Yeah.
want to have dialogue.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think this right here is, once we
Mind your
design
head,
it,
right?
is a low cost.
Yeah.
It's, pretty much a low cost implementation.
Yeah, there it is. Caution flying discs.
Yeah.
Did you add that? Or was that?
No, I actually found that.
Oh, did you? Okay, since we've talked.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
How many
Gosh.
goals does Frisbee golf need?
Well, I mean,
They do it like
it's like golf, like
Yeah.
9 or 18,
Yeah.
but we're not looking for a full course. We're just looking for a practice area.
You could start.
Oh,
But
Yeah,
like a
and you
pitch
can
and
start
putt.
with 9 hole, and you
Yeah.
can use some of them more than once too, from different
Yeah.
angles.
Yeah, I think this is low cost, low impact, and if we have some space for it, why not introduce it to the community? And it's it's free for the families, and it once, even when you put these baskets up, you can move them. It isn't like you can't rearrange your course, and we're all saying here is it can be a little like the old pitch and putt, and it's an activity anyway for folks in a section of the park that we may not otherwise just use.
And you use it in the wintertime.
Yeah, waterproof. It's waterproof.
Yeah.
I have I know we have the amphitheater. Has there ever been any discussion of, do we remove it and utilize that space for something else?
We discussed possibly covering it, maybe enhancing that area.
We've actually talked about enlarging it and covering it. And Counselor Clark, you may remember some of those initial conversations with it. And it was actually planned to be a much larger facility. And it seemed like some stronger voices at the time brought it down to what it is, which is it's kind of it's too small for most events that people would have.
And not only that, it was funded by the
Metro.
and you're not going to get that to come down.
So we've had conversations of looking at, how do you extend it, maybe cover it? Do you add maybe some power, whether it be solar, or if we're doing the field lighting, you can extend it, just to there. So it's a little bit more lit if you're having it covered, or you can have like a simple PA system
Yeah.
plugged in. We've talked more, how do we make it an asset instead of
Removing it.
just
Yeah.
kind of sitting
Yeah.
there?
And Edgefield actually has recommended people to use it for weddings, smaller groups where they didn't have facilities to accommodate.
Mhm.
So they inquired and asked for additional information to put on their website for it.
But again, I think if you get another row or two, then you can accommodate. Right now with adults, 25 is what you could probably fit. If you can, a couple more rows, get that number up a bit.
It was utilized the first couple of years, and then the plants kind of overtook it. And then I realized that it's been recently cleaned up.
It looks
So,
beautiful now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because again, I guess I'm looking at it as an asset that is underutilized. So either how do we maximize it, or what can we do to maximize that space there? So,
Signage.
And I think that's I think
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know it's there.
yeah.
Or that you could use it for weddings or for some sort of special occasion.
The other part was we had it, it was irrigated and then the line broke. I'm really stretching my memory on this too.
Either that or it was temporary.
Might
When
have
it
been
was constructed.
temporary for the creek enhancement project that went through
Yeah.
there at the
That
time.
was
Because
it.
Oh.
when we did the an irrigation enhancement project, there was no irrigation south of the ball field.
But you could see remnants of what was probably the temporary irrigation set up to get the plants established. And that ran off of actually Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again,
It looked
those
really
are,
pretty for a while and then it died
Yeah.
off.
because again, those are like considerations either to bring back to the Parks Commission. What do we do with that space? Do we enhance it, cover it, add some type of other amenities, lighting, solar lighting and things like that? And then again, advertise it, on the website, on signage to, because people, I've walked and I'm like, oh, we can just sit here. And it's like, well, when it's hot, it's really hot. 'Cause the sun's like just.
When it
beating up.
rains, it's wet.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, so how could we, again, maximize or better utilize that?
Yeah, staff has not talked about removing that. Staff has talked about possibly enhancing it.
And I think for a
And
good
you're right
person,
about the sun hitting you on the back is
Oh, yeah.
great for the person who's giving I've been to 3 events there. And every time the sun was beating us pretty darn hard on our back of our heads.
I think a good first step is just it exists and you can use it, and then getting that feedback of people who either use it or why they chose to not to, and then correcting it so it becomes a better asset.
Okay, so I'll just kind of recap. So Parks Commission, the recommendations were and this is priority in order, lighting. So around the multipurpose field north, restrooms, that was a priority. Signs, definitely a priority. Again, like I said, we have allocations still left over in this fiscal. So you'll see some signage and then, coming up in the next budget year, you may see some asks there. And then design opportunities for skate park, turf the infield, multipurpose futsal, basketball court, and then some of the smaller projects like discuss the disc frisbee golf, maybe a BMX trail, something like that. So any comments?
Regarding
Questions?
futsal court, well, Will ours be covered? Like if we get one is,
And that, I think we would put that in the design because right now it just, this time of year probably wouldn't be used a whole lot.
Yeah.
So if you cover it, people will use it. So,
Yeah.
does it cost more? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even in the summertime, I mean, the surface can,
Yeah, hot.
it gets hot.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a tennis court, so it gets really hot.
When we were talking too, while it would be, a futsal basketball court, nothing would stop someone from reserving it and holding then a covered large family gathering, whether it's a birthday party or maybe a barbecue type of thing. They're setting up tables in it because this is still a nice covered facility, whether it ran that day or, sun's beating down on them. So it really could be a multi-use facility.
So again,
John, yeah, this conversation we're having here, it appears that there's alignment with the council and what the Parks Commission, unless I'm missing something. Is that what you were looking for to see if we were in alignment?
yes,
Okay.
that is fair. Yes.
But
Again,
but somebody else can speak if they don't think we are, but I'm just listening from, a couple thousand miles away and it seems like there's alignment.
yeah, I agree with the Parks Commission.
Yeah.
Even though they have, restrooms and lights and restrooms, I would try to, in my opinion, I would put restrooms and lights like 1A, 1B. I think restrooms, for me, it's a little bit higher priority than lighting because lighting will come, but restrooms, I think, is something that we need to look into as quick as possible. Just we're increasing our park usage already.
Yeah.
And so I think having that as not just only amenity, but safety and things of that nature.
And I think that's how we're looking at it, both, again, the 4 pages of options. We looked at then lighting on the restrooms and how that could illuminate that space. But then also some lower hanging things like our parking lot lights, some of them are shielded probably a little too well. And how can you shield them so the neighbors aren't impacted, but casting some more light in the parking space or open spaces. And then, lighting, there's more studies involved, more things versus a restroom is a little more straightforward. And so, but we're kind of tackling them in tandem as we can.
And I think I want to add something too on when I said design opportunities for skate park, the turf infield, the multi-purpose futsal basketball court. And the reason why is a lot of these grants, you cannot be awarded. You can't even apply for a grant if you don't even have a design. So that was why that was kind of brought up as a recommendation, the design for some of those, because like the Tony Hawk skate park, you can't apply for it unless you have a design. So that's what was halted. I think it was 2018, 2019, when we tried to apply for a skate park grant.
Well, John, you just, that helps me understand this because the things you showed us, went through this tonight, that's a lot of design work. But you're telling me that, or telling us that if we are in alignment here with the parks, then the staff would begin looking for some design work so that we were ready should a grant come along. Is that correct?
Again,
Right.
as funding allows.
Okay. Okay.
Again, sorry, Mayor, the 3 priorities that were above that were the lighting, restrooms, and then signage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I get that. I just want to be clear that, clear in my own head that if we start design work, I mean, that in itself is expensive. We gotta have probably a little more clarity, don't you think, on what 3 or what 2 you might start design work on, or am I missing something?
No, Mayor, you're not missing anything.
And I also think we don't need to decide that priority right now. I think there's enough
Right.
in the hopper to focus on. Then once some of those wind down, then it becomes, okay, here's
Okay.
the next set of stuff.
Okay, all right. I was getting nervous here. But
No,
how
no,
many,
No action tonight, Mayor. Just again, just discussion, dialogue, back and forth. No action needed at this time. Just encouraging council feedback and guidance.
Yeah, well, I wasn't even worried about action tonight. I was just, didn't, didn't want us to think that we could start designing and you, anyway, thanks.
Tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, next meeting.
All right, well, I think staff got what they need?
Yeah.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council President, Council.
Right. Now discussion with Troutdale Court IGA, their finance director.
Council President, Mayor, councilors. Before you tonight, this is just informational. I wanted to bring you an update since we've been having discussions with one of our partners in the region on some cost sharing for the Troutdale Court. So just a bit of background. The IGA was approved at the end of 2017. And we entered into that agreement and explored that with the city of Troutdale since the county court was no longer taking a lot of the cases or moving them along as quickly as we would like them. So the IGA covers municipal code violations, MCSO traffic citations, and code enforcement actions. So some of what prompted this is we have been reaching out based on conversations with council on updating our code enforcement code from last summer and also wanting to start to move to take actions. And so we were inquiring about the status of the Troutdale Court and moving these through the IGA. So subsequent to our approval with Troutdale, Fairview loves to piggyback on a good Wood Village idea and reached out to do an IGA with Troutdale as well for the same reasons. So they ended up entering into a negotiation with them. And so it kind of, I want to say administratively put some things on hold because our IGA had some cost sharing that was assuming just Troutdale and Wood Village were participating. And then we added Fairview. And then right about the time all of that got ironed out, COVID hit and court shut down. And so all of that to say, we haven't really been billed for any of the costs of that since the IGA was negotiated. So Troutdale reached out to us a few months ago, said, hey, here's the section that talks about fines and fees and cost reimbursement. This is the text, but we've never actually tried to figure out how to go through the billing process. And so they sent over a draft of what the billing process might look like. And I included the summary pages in your packet for the 2 fiscal years. They sent along a lot more information, line item detail, staffing costs, how they did the allocation, how they compiled all the statistics. It looks to be fairly straightforward and pretty fair way of approaching it. So I don't have any concerns about that. Just to kind of give you a quick overview, they look at the total volume of citations processed and they have some shared court costs to kind of come up with a cost per citation. And then there's also a piece where some of the cases require a court-appointed attorney. And so the court-appointed attorney costs aren't allocated or average, they're just billed directly based on the number of cases you have. So that can fluctuate depending on how many of those you have per year. So they come up with kind of all of the costs for the year. And then they go in and take a look at the amount of revenue that each case has returned. And then any deficit is what they would bill. And if there's a credit, they would. We've talked a little bit about how this would actually play out if there's a credit. My goal, my suggestion to them was we don't want a check from them. We'd rather them just hold it so that in future years, if there's an overage, that would kind of act as a credit and kind of an offset. Not that we don't want to be billing each other year over year and sending money back and forth between Troutdale and Wood Village, but So they're kind of working on how this would be implemented in terms of getting credits, because this year is 2020, 2021, which is probably the lowest year for total number of traffic citations that they've experienced. The information for 21, 22 was included in your packet and saw a pretty dramatic uptick. Not just a lower cost that had to be shared by the 3 jurisdictions, but actual number of cases went up quite significantly. So this is one where the more business the court does and the more traffic kind of volume it handles, the lower the cost per citation. And I think in 21, 22, Fairview had a credit back to them. They actually collected more money than it cost to process their cases. So we don't expect, this is probably the worst case scenario for us on an annual basis, just based on kind of historical trends with court citation data. So there's no action required. This is an informational update for you all. Since we approved it in 2017 and we really haven't seen anything and it's 2023, that was probably a good idea before we put it into the budget for next year as a potential cost to bring it back to you and kind of let you know kind of what the process has been up to this point. So that's all I have for you for presentation. Happy to have any questions, comments, concerns.
With sharing that court with the more activity now with 3.
You muted yourself, Council, Mayor.
Given that the more usage there on the court, how far out would we be with one of our citizens, for a citation or on, some kind of code violation? Can you get any idea on that?
You mean in terms of timing?
Yeah, timing to actually get this remedied, possibly remedied through court.
I think on the traffic citations, they're pretty good. If there's any odd municipal code or code enforcement, that's kind of on a case by case basis.
Yeah, John and I met with them on, kind of setting up the stage for some of our monument code cases. And it sounded like, from the time we would start trying to get them into court, 4 to 6 weeks, to kind of ballpark it, not knowing all the details and things. But it also sounded like for like a traffic citation or something the MCSO would do, that was more, I'll call it, 14 days because they were running court twice a month now. So I think it just depended on when the citation landed in that rotation.
Okay. And Greg, does this take care of some of that pushback it sounded like you were getting earlier about
that was the meeting on the pushback, and it was more philosophical differences in how to approach, I think, code enforcement is where it really flushed down to, and where some risks lie and where Troutdale is willing to go. Because if there was appeals and things like that, it pretty much just appealed their $1,000 a day levy that's their approach, is just hit them every day with $1,000. Our approach is more, we want to mitigate it. And then the risk associated, if we were to do something that were to get appealed, what those remedies would be, instead of just not collecting some money as having court costs, there could be some actual, call it damages to reimburse the party. That's really where that lied. But again, hopefully we don't really have to explore that.
Yeah, I just don't, I just sound like I don't want Troutdale. None of us want Troutdale to dictate what kinds of cases we may want to take to court.
Correct. And I mean, it seemed like while they were certainly hesitant, if we really said this is what we're doing, they said go forth. I also want to be really clear that, we talked about traffic citations, and the more citations, the less cost per citation. We by no means dictate the sheriff's office and if they stop somebody, whether they cite them, warning or not. It's full discretion to that deputy. So we're not saying, oh, write more. No, we are not saying that.
And this clearly shows we're jack up the price.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I appreciate it.
If I may, this is where I was going to go with my question is that, so I've served on many city trials or where a citizen would say, well, I stopped at that stop sign and the city police officer said he didn't. And he gave him a citation for it and it would end up in a city court. And he would ask for a public defender. And, you know, he didn't have the money to cover for it. And so the city would end up having to cover it, right? So then we go back all the way through it and then we create rules and regulations, I'll call it, right? Because I don't understand all these court stuff. And I know that we have Jeff here to help us with that type of thing. But suffice it to say, the judge said, you know, when we got all that stuff ironed out, it got to where the city didn't have to pay for that kind of thing. And I don't know how they did it, but my point is that that's what I'm afraid of. Is that what's going on here when we're not in charge of the court? And we've got the sheriff's department handing out tickets and these people are calling for a lawyer. They can't afford it. We're supplying it. And then so they get a ticket for $200 and then we're out $2,000. And you know, even though it may come out that we won, we're $1,800 in the hole.
Luckily, I don't think they're not bringing in an attorney just for that 10-minute case. They have the defender there for that court day. So ours is the proportionate cost of that 10-minute trial or whatnot.
And you'll notice that they broke that out separately here so for example, for the whole year, we ended up paying about $780 for court appointed attorneys. And
Yeah. So
overall, it was about, if you look at it,
total cost. Yeah, I saw that.
$9,000 out of a total of $155,000 was the court appointed attorney. So I think that all of that
We're
to say,
still in the rears by $5,000 though, right?
yeah. So
Well,
there
wouldn't
was, so all of that to say, I think that that's a very small percentage of their cases actually get a public defender or a court appointed attorney for those. And I have to imagine that most of those are the non-traffic variety. I think the traffic ones are pretty cut and dry. I think you even get if they run like the city of Tigard, which is where I got my citation, they actually get a discount for not challenging them in court.
I think that's what they.
Yeah, I get that too,
That's what I've heard.
So this is actually kind of hard to follow, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I realize what you're showing here. I like graphs, that makes it so much easier to see what is the potential for all of these citations versus what are the separated costs. And then, the collected revenues. Did we actually pull in the money? Maybe
Yeah.
they couldn't even have paid these fines.
And I can go through,
I don't know.
I can go through and take a look at that in the detail and attach that as part of your next council packet. They sent over some detail. I can just pull out the Wood Village numbers and send those over.
Because all these numbers are based on folks that, get a citation in the city of Wood Village. Correct?
Correct.
So if nobody got a citation, we're not paying any share because we didn't use that service.
Correct.
It's based off service.
You're hoping, right?
No, well,
Yeah, no,
I think that's what the IGA would state out.
Yeah.
It's not we're hoping, I think that's what the IGA
no,
would
I
state
get
out.
Well, I appreciate the cleanup on this and the updating, Seth, and getting the numbers out there. Maybe Jeff can clarify. I don't think, clarify, Jeff, that if Multnomah County writes a ticket for somebody and they happen to write it in Wood Village, if it goes to court, it's a Multnomah County ticket. It's not a Wood Village ticket.
And is the county giving us any kind of, I'm sorry.
Money.
Yeah, I mean, they used to do this. That
think-
used to be a part of it.
I actually, I don't know, I'd have to go back to the IGA, but I think that since the sheriff is serving as our city police chief, that it is, even though it's the county issuing the citation within
Yeah,
the city.
speaking of the microphone,
get
otherwise
money.
the mayor can't hear you.
I can't hear. I didn't hear Jeff's response.
The mayor pays them all.
Okay. All right. Well, I better start doing some more recycling.
Since the county sheriff is actually serving as the city police chief, and the deputies are deputies of the city police. When they issue a citation within the city of Wood Village, it counts as a Wood Village citation and we pay for it.
Okay.
And I
And then,
believe, go ahead, Mayor.
well, and then if there was an appeal and they needed an attorney, a court-appointed attorney, then that would be Wood Village picking that up.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And that's where I believe any revenues received first go to pay for the court costs. And that's where Seth was saying, had there been a surplus, it would be a credit to then any future court costs. It's just been, when you look at the relative few number of citations, it's just.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a cost, but that cost is dramatically less than if we try to run it in-house. And there's a lot of efficiencies gained now that the sheriff's office essentially cites its contract cities into one court that is, I think, much more manageable in terms of scheduling and outcomes and tracking than Multnomah County Court, which deals with the whole slew of other cases.
Yeah.
The other benefit that isn't mentioned, but is a big benefit, is you have a judge in a court system that's used to dealing with municipal violations. It's, circuit court has bunches of other stuff that they deal with, and if they get a city municipal code violation, they don't quite frankly know what to do with it. So
Jeff and I have
it's,
personal experience with that.
Yeah,
from a few years back.
I have very personal experience with that. But so it's not only more efficient, it's also and faster for the citizens. It's also, you get a court that understands municipal code enforcement.
Yeah, and so there is a cost, even if the annual cost is $4,000 or $5,000 to the city, what we're getting people not having to wait 6 to 7 months to resolve their traffic fine or municipal code violation. Can hopefully be done within a month or two.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
And then staff will be obviously reviewing this report annually and then things to ensure that everything's in place financially and ensuring that if there was a credit, it's there. And
Yeah.
we can apply it when need be.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Council President.
All right,
Councilors.
we'll move on to discussion, community outreach efforts with our city manager.
All right, thank you again. Got a brief presentation because hopefully becomes a little bit of discussion, a little bit interactive. And I know from the staff report, there's probably some confusion. I'm confident the first part of my presentation will just sound like a rambling stream of consciousness. I assure you there's a method to the madness, but certainly at any time, just pop in with a question or comment, and either we can address it then, or if it's going to come up shortly, we'll tackle it then. So, community outreach and engagement. So, in the current year's annual performance plan, that was one of the things, to a very robust effort, and that's essentially how it was defined in the plan. And we were going to then work through the year of defining what that looked like, and then starting to do the work. So as staff started to do an RFP and really get the ball rolling, when we reached out to other organizations, they provided a lot of lessons learned that said, hey, you might want to think about this differently. If these are some of your goals, this may not be the best path for you to go down. So we brought that up at the retreat and had a lengthy conversation that I think brought up more questions than answers, and maybe added a little more murk to the water instead of adding clarity. So what we did is we sifted through the muck over the last month or so and really try to get at some of the essential pieces that can keep this moving forward. And that's what we have for you this evening. So we put together those focal points, and the first one is what is this purpose? And we talked a lot about at the retreat of why you do these things, and we really distilled it down to kind of two components. Do you have you're doing a strategic plan or strategic outcomes, or, what's the next big thing for Wood Village, and that drives the engagement? Or is it, we want to talk to people and have, conversations, and that then develops this engagement or strategy or next big thing? So, it sounds similar, but it actually is quite different how you approach it. One is, we've set up a whole framework because we want to do these things, and now we're going to outreach to you and talk about them, versus we want to have conversations with you and hear and see what's going on from y'all's perspective. And then we're going to distill that down and then bring it back as like more of a strategic element. We also looked at timelines. And one thing that we thought fits nicely is our event season, which typically runs kind of spring through fall. So you kind of kick off with Easter egg hunt. There's a lot of people at the park, and it's a good opportunity to catch people for a few minutes as they're waiting for their hunt or their activity. We have, you know, the night out, which is, I mean, prime for this kind of event. We've got the Family Fun Friday, where again, kids are playing baseball, parents are free games. You know, followed up with, you know, Pumpkin Fest and things. So some other events like tree lighting, you know, doesn't fit so well. Cleanup Day doesn't fit so well, but there's already kind of a schedule of events. And then there's the partner events such as Hispanic Heritage Month that really kind of can allude to that kind of effort. Which brings us to then the effort. And we've categorized it, you know, in kind of low, medium, or high level. And that includes both, call it, whether it's staff time, volunteer time, or dollars and resources. And these are broken down into 6 other categories that I'll go into next. So for city events, the spectrum there, we've got our current events and I'll call, you know, known ones that fit, like I just mentioned. But that could be expanded into, you know, some workshops, some open houses, all the way up and into including, you know, specific neighbor fairs, pop-up events, brand new things, you know, whole new slew of events. We have our community partners and they have their events. Like I mentioned, the Hispanic Heritage Month, maybe Las Posadas. There's some opportunities there. Continuing down the spectrum, we're not just a sponsor of some of those events, we're an active participant and are bringing, you know, something new to the table to really get some more engagement. And then continuing further down is, no, it's like a co-event and we're making it bigger, better, more robust. And we're, you know, more of an active partner instead of just a passive participant. Equipment and supplies. If we're having casual conversations at events, maybe some clipboards, pens, notebook paper with the questions, they can write some notes all the way through to, you know, enticements, ice cream machines, a whole new round of event gear. So as we're going down to neighbor fairs, there's barbecues, pop-ups, chairs, you know, electronic display boards. I mean, a whole investment there. For training, you know, it could be as simple as here's some readings on how to ask open-ended questions and continue having conversations, to 1 or 2 hour training with, you know, East County resolutions, to a full-on, you know, weeks long train the trainer. So you're all taking the training to then train other volunteers and interns and whatnot. For media, we've got our newsletter, website, social media. That's a growing thing that could be expanded to do targeted paid advertisements in some of those social media messaging, to full on ad campaigns and you're mailing surveys with a $5 bill in it to get responses back. And then we get to the real heart of the matter and time and volunteers, you know, doing the work. We have our existing resources and we spent some time a few meetings ago talking about your all involvement at events and what that could look like, and get moving on the spectrum to maybe we bring on an intern in the summer to help with events and some outreach things, to full on. We've got a youth council, we've got a community engagement advisory board, and that feeds back into council. I mean, you can make it as big or small as you want. So here's the same thing on that spectrum that was in your packet, and what we'd like for you to do now, if you didn't already think about it beforehand, because it was, you know, a little confusing. We have this chart here that Seth also passed back out in a bigger form. And really what we want to know from you all of the 6 categories, what's your instinct? We think we can handle this, or this is where we want to go. Is it that low, medium, or high in those 6 categories? And I'm happy to kind of put that slide back up to remember kind of what what the levels were, understanding that some feed into others. So for example, city events, you're like, no, we need to hit this hard with new events, neighbor fairs, pop-ups. That naturally is going to have to increase equipment supplies and increase time and volunteers, for example. So some of it's, if you do option A, you've got to pick B, C, D. And we didn't bring that all out. We kind of wanted to see what your initial thoughts were, with the idea being, hopefully you're all near the same page. We will take that information back and then start actually crafting some tangible things. So happy to entertain questions at the moment for clarity, and then give you all a moment to come maybe either fill out the form, talk amongst yourselves. What can I do to help?
Initial thoughts?
Did I just throw a bunch of mud on your puddle?
So.
Well, I didn't do my homework. I lost it. And I tried to send it to you electronically, but you apparently didn't get it.
Not if it's lost.
Not if your dog ate it.
Yeah.
Like us to fill out, like talk about what we're gonna,
It's really your choice. I mean, if you want to talk about it first, or just take a moment, make a check mark in some of the boxes and then talk about it, or just it's individual and you each just, here's what I wrote down, and then you talk about it. It's your process, with the goal of trying to get to a consolidated consensus. So then we have something to bring back. What we really don't want to do is keep things within our, I'll call it, current capacities. And then the other half saying, no, huge, big effort. Hopefully we're similar enough that then staff can bring back a package that aligns with your priorities there.
So I guess, for me, since, this is something that will need to be revisited, every year or every other year. I don't think it's like we did it once, we're good, we're done, put it on the shelf type of thing. So I think that also, for me, that's how I was thinking when I did these check boxes. And so, since it being our first year, we can do, from just thinking out loud, one or two things. We can stick with our current events, but really maximize the equipment and time volunteers and utilize and maximize those events to really go out and do something. Now, if we see that we haven't gathered enough information, then that's when we can say, okay, now we can add neighborhood fairs. I hadn't thought of that, but I was like, you know what, that actually would be actually pretty cool. As a small city we are, I'm already like, okay, and this neighborhood, we could hold an event here or hold an event here. And so
I think we outlined a dozen that we could hold.
Just geographic areas like Riverwood, we have Upper Village, we have.
Well, they have the park. They have the park that's centralized.
We have 3 or 4 mobile homes. We have some large apartment complexes, the byways, just you could do just local pop-up barbecue or food event listening sessions. But again, you could do 12 of them, but then.
But can you do 12? So again, my idea, my thought when I did this is at first I did put low, but then, hearing what you said, that I put high, but then again, just rethinking is like, maybe we do, our event season, we focus on those 3-4 big events that we have coming up, because the Easter's coming up. That one's next month, and could we have something ready by then? That'd be the hope, right? And then as council,
your child can't get their face painted unless you answer 3 questions.
But then again, as council, are we the ones, or are we looking for volunteers to help do that outreach, right? And so that's where, for me, I think always equipment, supplies, and time and volunteers, those are always going to be high priorities. Because if we can't do it, we can't expect staff to throw all the burden on them. We're going to have some assistance.
So when we first moved here, one of the first things that happened to us is my pickup got stolen. we hadn't been here even 2 weeks, moved into our house. And so my wife went right on to the, I'll call it a stampede of doing going around to all the neighbors and collecting all of the information that we could do to create a neighborhood watch. And she became a captain. And then other people wanted to join in with other neighborhoods and stuff. So she started developing this in quite a ways into our area. And we got with the sheriff's department, and that expanded considerably to where the council was on board with it. And then the council was even working with the sheriff's department to go into those neighborhoods, into the captain with those captain areas and stuff. And they would meet with them and what could they do to help. And it got to be a pretty good thing. And then all of a sudden it's kind of just faded. And so as I look at this chart here of what you're looking at here, the way I interpreted this, because you're looking at this and you're looking and you're going, okay, so city events, that's always been a high thing. So now is that considered a low priority? That's how I was reading this. And then time and volunteers, that used to be really high and it's become a low. So maybe we should put that into a high area now. So that's how I was reading this. So maybe I'm reading this entirely wrong.
And that's what we thought there'd probably be a little confusion in that. And it wasn't
Right.
that they're not necessarily a high priority. It's the level of, to call it resource allocation.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
That's involved with it. So it's all still a priority. Events are still a priority. Recruiting volunteers and having a sense of community is still a high priority. Are we doing what we're continuing to do and more or less taking full advantage of our current opportunities and current, whether it's staffing, volunteer abilities, or is it really pressing and expanding those offerings? And I think as Council President Rios Campos mentioned, as we talked about this, got more and more ideas, it isn't a one and done. It can be an iterative process. For example, this event season, we get information back, we distill that down, and then we next step it with, here's what we heard from, members of the community. And maybe it is, it starts growing a little bit that way, much like the purpose where it's engagement moving towards, some kind of community defined outcome versus the converse,
Here's the outcome.
which is, here's what we want to do.
We have support.
What should be baked into it.
Just to further that a little bit, when we first moved here, not everybody was on board with using the internet either and sharing that kind of information. And we've expanded on that. And now whenever we get a new neighbor in our little street, and it's kind of a weird pocket of how we operate it, because we don't have fences in our neighborhood so much. But whenever we capture somebody new, people will say, hey, Mary is the person who's keeping track of everybody. So we pass on we still continue to keep everybody abreast of who's who. So that's just, now we just do it naturally, I guess is a way to put it. But we've lost who any of the captains are further on past us now. So I have no idea who they are. And I don't know if the city's keeping up with any of that or.
No, I think
Sheriff
it
is.
reached its peak around, call it 2009 and 10, when we haven't had, signs and everything else. And it really seemed to, for the rest of the community, live and die with a couple of people that they were the energy and momentum behind it. And when they moved or otherwise relocated, no one else picked up the baton and kept it marching.
Okay. And then for me, community partners was between low and medium. So I kind of put it in that medium just because I think the city's already doing its portion of that. And so what more, not that I don't see an investment in putting more resources, but I think we're at a good position with that. And then with media, I think, again, with our new community engagement coordinator, they've been doing a phenomenal, especially on the social media aspect. Could we eventually look for something more intentional, like certain neighborhoods or certain areas to really mail something out to them? Sure. But again, I think we should take baby steps with this, but the big steps would be volunteers and supplies, equipment. And that's on my opinion.
And just going back to social media and our current reach, you all can't see it because you don't admin our Facebook page. But most weeks, our weekly reach is over 10% of our population. You know, it hits 500, 600, 700 weekly visits. Now we don't know, they may be from outside the community, and you know, our reach is pretty big. It's the internet. But just knowing that over 10% regularly is viewing posts and things is pretty remarkable.
Mayor, any thoughts?
Well, I'm listening and I'm looking at the chart. And I did not do this chart because I didn't get all the way to the end of my packet when I pulled that up. So I'm not sure I'm ready to start making X's and crosses. I can look at this and see that it's fluid and that it would, as stated, probably it would need to be looked at periodically. I just, I don't want to venture anything forward right now, except very simply, I can see some that I would probably rate low at this point. Not that they're not important, but where we're at, and perhaps through my perspective, where I believe I'm at, and that would be some would be low. Again, I think we're doing a pretty good job with media. We've been doing some training and with consultants. I would put that at low right now. Doesn't mean it might end up next year being medium, but for right now, I think equipment and supplies, I don't really know what that means. If it's supplies to pull off the event, if that's what that is, but I think I'd put that medium. So I can work up this chart. But I'm not sure I'm ready to turn in a chart with it marked right now. And that's on me. I'm happy to do this and send it to Greg. And I know you wanted to come out of this meeting with a collective version of it. And if we can, I'm willing to sit here, but I'll send mine in. And if it matches up, you know, it may align with all four. If everybody else has got their chart done, take their chart and I will do mine, and you can fit it in there.
How about this? One, I think it'll help clarify, instead of low, medium, or high, it probably should have been more current resource, marginal increase of resource, dramatically amount of increased resource. So again, it's not priority, but it's reading that. And I do apologize when we were talking about it. I mean, you know, we were talking it out and it made sense to us, but I can also understand how it looks and feels like it becomes a prioritization, and it's more about resource allocation being current, a little bit more, a lot more. And I think there's nothing wrong with now having this conversation, hopefully a little more clarity on what we were seeking to bring this back in a few meetings. You know, part of what we were thinking about is if there is going to be a lot of ask for increased resource, we would have that for budget. We can still put in a budget number that could really fit a spectrum of choices. And we'll just bring this back with kind of that intentionality behind, and now you understand what we were trying to seek, and maybe you can kind of think of up some ideas, and then we'll craft it from there. Certainly, we can put together couple of questions for the Easter egg hunt, you know, some clipboards and paper. What do you think of Wood Village, or where are you even from? To, you know, get the ball rolling. And then as we move more into, you know, night out, for example, it's hopefully a little more refined and crafted. How does that sound to you all?
Yeah, because I mean, even with that clarification, then my check marks, you know, changed, not drastically, but significantly to something totally different. But I still think with something like this, you know, time and volunteers, that for me I think will still be one of the increase.
And maybe that's
Resource.
something to, we'll resend this out. Like I said, if you want a lot more investment in city events, that drives that you have to then have high investments in some of the other areas. So maybe we can qualify that a little bit. So there's that understanding. And also we can start, say small, we can start in a simple approach and build up to things kind of organically as we navigate this together. And as the community is trying to understand what's wrong with the city? Why are you doing this? We actually had a comment through a social media post of, why does the city keep asking all this stuff? Is something wrong?
I think it's new, right? And I also find the value in ensuring that things aren't too simple. So, more than 3 questions for the survey, I think would be appropriate even for the Easter one, just to gather, we have an opportunity. So let's take advantage to at least get something out of it. And so, do you like this event? I think that'd be good, right?
That's not an open-ended question. That shuts it down. What do you think of this
There
event?
you go. There you go. What would you improve or something like that?
And just for further clarification on kind of how I'm thinking about this in terms of time and money is, we're probably going to do all the low stuff. Like, because that's stuff where it's mostly changing approach and working within existing resources. So if everyone picked low, we probably wouldn't come with a budget ask, because we can probably do that just by modifying.
We might get a shaved ice machine.
Greg's pushing for shaved ice. We said no to the soft serve when we pulled some of the.
It was really expensive.
It's really expensive, and you have to like clean it very well after every
Who wants to
use.
clean stuff?
No, shaved ice, I mean, that's, you close that out, you're fine. But this is really more of, especially kind of going into this season, are there any of these you want to bump up and have kind of a more enhanced effort as we're kind of going through this, like is the focus? And so, for example, we could do city events where we have a booth just kind of as outreach, or a coffee stand where as you're standing in line, you have to have a conversation with the counselor to get a coffee, like those type of things where it's already a city event. We're just adding something a little
Yeah.
extra that's kind of community engagement focused. Or would you rather we look at finding a community partner and enhance their event with something similar, like our event versus their event? And so those are kind of, as you're kind of ticking up these things, the level of effort and focus of staff is going to kind of increase with that. And so we're really trying to get a priority, because there's so many great things to do. It's what should we be doing and focusing on is kind of the.
We are tackling the same thing at the Citizen Noise Advisory Committee as well. And going back out to do our outreach with the communities in Washington and Oregon, in 5 counties that we service. So there's a pattern going here. So,
But again, just going to our initial first big event, the Easter, right? We're also doing the health check with the natural leaders. So I think, what a great opportunity as people are waiting, right? To have a conversation with somebody, or to just, interact with somebody and see what information we can gather from there. So I think
We talked about the Easter egg hunt. Maybe you don't let your kid get in until you've taken a survey, but then we figured that might be a little too much for what I want. And so kind of alternative is, this counselor might have good candy bars, but you have to talk to them before you get one of the good ones.
Like that.
And so knowing the priority, we can kind of work that into our current city event plan that then.
It's just a little more intentional because, council always got the bag of candy to hand out. And now there's an additional purpose to it. It's not just waiting for someone to come up to you. You can go up to people and say, hey, thanks for coming to the event. Insert question here.
get your child better candy.
Right.
Find an abandoned van that says free candy inside.
come on.
But if the summary here is that the low, if I heard right from Greg and Seth there, low would essentially mean what's going on existingly. I mean, what we're doing, and that we have funding for it, and we have staff resources. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're basically, it's what we're doing now, but tweaked a little bit within current resource allocations.
Okay, that does help clarify it for me some.
I will rework this with staff and, change the header there, and then maybe add a little more detail or some other, thought things. So give us a couple days, we'll send it back out. So then when we talk at a future meeting, it makes a little more sense. We can have then that final conversation.
Well, it's a good primer as I'm looking at it, and this conversation itself is a good primer to really begin thinking about what we think we want to do and what we think we can do, and start looking at it very, very specifically and strategically. So appreciate what you got done here.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, one of the brainstorm ideas was at the night out, you could dunk tank the mayor, but you got to ask some questions first.
I love that idea.
I second that.
John, do you?
Hey, I'm coming back into town, you guys. You know that, don't you? You know I'm coming back into town. I'm not going to be gone forever here. I'm taking a lot of shots here. It's a target-rich environment for you guys, and that ain't going to continue now. I know it.
Well, there was still a first and a second. I'm just saying.
All right, well, thanks. Thanks for the discussion, and we'll send it back out, and they'll have that discussion at a future meeting.
Good. Thanks, Greg, for this workup, though. Oh, shoot.
And
Yeah,
with
that was the last meeting. Oh, shoot.
Um, and any final comments, thoughts?
Pyro,
Yes.
hey, thanks for handling those. This was a hard meeting and complicated at the end, especially. But would you call me tomorrow? I got a question about a couple things regarding to our meeting tomorrow.
Oh, I did have.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I said yes.
So I actually do have a comment to make. I may or may not be at the next meeting. My wife's surgery on the 24th is actually a lot more complicated than we thought. So that's still up in the air of whether I'll be here or not, but the team's got it. They're good.
Oh, yeah. Take care.
Yeah.
They're
No
good
problem.
people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
priorities. All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Good night, friends. I think. I don't know for sure.
Really excited.
Maybe it'll be dunk the mayor and or city manager. I mean.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
He's volunteering. I mean,